You're gathering all of the key items that we need about this specific asset, such as what type of account it is, the name, we'll say just checking account, its current value, and the interest rate. So we've got all this information that is now being stored locally in this one component. But when we click add, we want to store that in Redux. So this is where we're going to jump into discussing Redux a little bit and actions. So I'll show you how I do it, and then we can go from there. And if you guys have any questions, I'd love to hear them. So what we're going to do is we need to create a function that will add this to Redux. But we have to make sure that we have our Redux reducer that will be storing all the assets and liabilities, and that it has an action that can then store that in the reducer. So I'll show you how I will tackle that. So I'm going to go into, I've already built a assets and liabilities, so it's just a net worth reducer. So I'm going to go into Redux, into my net worth reducers. So what it's going to be, essentially, it's a little bit much right now, but it's going to contain a series of objects, and each object will have all of this stuff that is initial state. So all the information pertaining to that one type of asset or liability. So if we go back over here, we kind of look at, we want to get the cash value. We also want the rate of return, the type of account. We need to have its purchase value, market value. So there's a lot of information that we have to be storing about each one. Now, the trouble is, ideally, it would be so easy to have it set so that we just have assets, one value, liabilities, one value, boom, and then just there's your net worth. And we could do that, but if we do that, there's nothing special about this. What makes this special is that we're able to gather all this information and then see how it plays together and plays into all the other elements of somebody's financial planning. So we're able to gather their estimated purchase price and the market value. From that, we'll be able to calculate their taxes owing if they were to sell the property. So then different things, if they wanted to see what their estate taxes would be one day, we could show them that by having this information. We could also show them how much it will go up in value over time, how fast they'll pay off their mortgages. So the price that we pay for being that or having that much information that we can show is we have to hold that much information. So each item is going to have a lot of information on it. We're going to be passing that into the reducer and storing it. So often, before I would kind of have it set with the reducer where I would make a bunch of example objects. So here you can see, initially I just wanted to have these simple objects that would contain all the information, but we're not going to be able to do that because we have way more information that we want to store. So I'm going to, in my initial state, so what I'd been doing before is I had all these example items like the checking account and investments and things, and they could manipulate those with range bars, but I'm going to take them all out. And I might even just take out everything from the initial state. So it's just going to be like an empty bucket. I'll do that here. So the two things that initial state will have is two separate buckets or categories that we call them, the assets and the liabilities. And then we will be adding, when we create a new item, we're going to add it to assets or we're going to add it to liabilities. The way that we're going to do that is we're going to go into actions here. Now I have some old actions. I have an add item action. So this is basically going to be the same thing. What we're going to do, so I'll just kind of zoom it down so you can look just at this one. The add item action is essentially, it's a function, and it's going to it wants an ID, so it's going to be creating for each of the new items that we're adding. They have to have a unique ID so that we can go in later, we could change them, or we could delete them. So we need them to each have their own specific ID. We can't just have the name be the ID because sometimes they might have the same name. Then the state. So the state represents everything that we gathered in here. So all of this stuff, plus we're going to get quite a bit more that we're going to be gathering. So all of that will be pushed over into our reducer. So where were we here? So basically, we're gathering all of this. Then we're going to fire an action in our add item function that will take all of the state. So imagine it's carrying it along. So this is the function. It's going to take an ID and a state. Then it also has a type. So type is this right here, net worth, reducer, add item. And then I like to put the name of the reducer before, because for different types of reducers, I'm probably going to have other actions that are also called add item or set value or remove or change label. So I have to make sure that it's specific to this reducer. So I just like this way of doing it. There's a whole bunch of different conventions that people do for their naming. I don't really like the Andre Negwe style, or his friend that did that course, where he had a separate file where he named them. I just found that was too tedious, and I just hate having too many files. So we've got this. The action is, or the type of the action is this. So if we go into the reducer, you can just ignore these ones. So we go into here. We get net worth reducer. So the reducer is a switch statement, and it happens to catch when we do this. It's going to have this type will be net worth reducer add item. So what we want to do, we want to capture, or we want to copy all of state. So we're going to copy everything that's already in state, and so that way we're not manipulating everything. Then we want to go into the category, and the category is either going to be asset or liability. Now, in this case, I have it saying action.payload. I don't like it saying action.payload because I find it just makes it too long. So I'm actually going to try, I'm just gonna do this. I'm not gonna have a payload. Some people might be upset, but we're just gonna pass in the whole thing. Just means that we can shorten code. Go back into the reducer. So action.category. So each item that we have in our state has to be referencing the either it's an asset or a liability. So I want to go into my short-term assets and make for my initial state a category. And the category will either be asset or liability. So I'll be able to change that in the wizard that's rendering it. So in here, this is where we're saying, just make sure I'm recording. Yes, I am. So this is where it's saying, are we, or we're rendering the assets and so on. So when I render out the component, so in here, in this case, I would say we want to render it as an asset. So we're in the assets topic right now. So we'll be passing, this will be going in as props, but for right now, I'm just going to hard code it in as assets, or asset. I had it named as asset in the reducer. Okay, so we're going to go back to the reducer. So now the action has as its category asset in this circumstance, but it could also have liability because we'll be able to change that code a little later. So then it's going to copy, so it's going to go into asset, then it's going to make a full copy of that. Fortunately, we can get rid of this, so we can shorten code, which is so nice. So it's going to go into make a copy of that, and then it also has an ID. So it's going to go into its own ID item. So it's going to create one if there isn't one there already. And then, I knew there was a reason that I liked having payload. So turns out in this case, I want to have payload because I want that whole thing to just be one object, and I don't want to have to put in each individual object here. It's a little, I can't really explain it too well, but I was wrong. I shouldn't have cut out all that code, and I should have the payload option there. Sorry guys, sorry, that's confusing. So the reason is if I'm passing it in, these are all separated. They aren't one joint object, and so they're all kind of spread out, and I can't just put them all into, I can't say the entire action, make that the new item, because it's also going to have type and it's going to be kind of messed up. So I have to have it as payload. Sorry, I hope that makes sense. So let's try this again. So payload, it's going to have the entire state. That's going to create the new item, and it's got its ID, where it's going to set where it is. Oops, I'm just going to ignore that. So let's try it out. So what I need to do, I'm going to go into my actions. I've got add item action. I'm going to copy this. I'm going to go over into my wizard, and I want to take this action and throw it into play here. So I'm going to import it. Import from, and it's Redux net worth actions. think. Is that right? I can never remember. No, it's not right. Net worth underscore. So you'll notice that I like always having underscore action or underscore reducer on an item if it is one of those. I just find it so much easier to then be able to differentiate what kind of function I'm working with or what kind of item I'm looking at or so on. It just makes it so much easier later when I'm looking back at my code. It makes it a little longer, but I think it's worth it. So what we've done is we've imported this action from our little actions library there, and we don't have to do it in the map state to props. We can do it here in the dispatch. So if you've been following the Redux learning, then you'll know that first you got to do your map state to props, which is your pulling in your reducers, and then you pull in your actions over here in dispatch. Sometimes people write out the map dispatch to props and pass that whole thing in here, but personally I like it just this way. I find it a little simpler, and you don't have to do map dispatch to props or even think about dispatch. You just have to write it like this and it'll work. There's also new ways with hooks where you can pull them in, but I'm not going to worry about that. I haven't really learned that yet, but that would probably be nice. So now we've destructured it. It's passed in here, and we need to create an add item function. So const add item, and what's it going to do? So first thing I want to do is I want to create a random number, which is going to be our ID. And we'll just go math.random times dot to fixed. Let's try that. Fixed. Maybe that should work. We'll see. Then we've got this function. So I want to go add item action, and so we don't want to call it random number. We want to call it ID, because that is our new ID. So that's going to be going in here as well as our state. Then what we want to do is we need to clear the state. So I'm going to go set state. I don't want to do the prevent default whole thing with form submit buttons. I just don't like that. So I'm going to go set state, and I'm going to go ... initial state. So we then reset it all. So now it's empty. And let's see if that works. I would like to be able to pull in the net worth reducer so that I could see if it's there. So I'm going to grab it. I'm going to go down to my map state to props, net worth reducer, state dot net worth reducer. So I'm just grabbing the reducer so that I can see it. I want to console log it. So it's being passed now in with the map state to props. So now I can grab it using the destructuring. So I'm going to go like that. And then in here, I'm going to go console log my net worth reducer. So hopefully we can see if we put it in. So moment of truth. Oh wait, we didn't hook up add item as our on click. So on click, I'm going to do add item. And then this was in the button, and I don't think the button just has an on click. It doesn't do anything, but I can just confirm. So I'm going to go down into UI, check out my buttons, button light, on click. What does it do? It just fires on click. So I tell what on click is, and it'll do it. So back into here, so on click, it's going to fire add item. Since we have the state already really close to it, I'm not going to pass it in. I think it should work just like this, but we'll see. We'll see if that works or not. So back over here. Ooh, initial state is not defined. Why is that? Oh, so it needs to take initial state, I suppose. Yeah, I suppose so. That's strange, I guess. Yeah, okay. Well, let's do it. So initial state, and then add item equals initial state. See what that does. It says state is not defined, then I was wrong. Okay, 49. Why is it giving me that? Set state, initial state, and that is spelt the same in... Oh, that's spelt wrong. Oh, that's so terrible. initial state. Perfect. Then I will try not passing it in. Let's see if that works. Okay. So we're going to create checking account. Name is checking account. Cash value is, this guy is pretty rich. He's going to have a lot of money in it. Oh, 2,500, sure. Yeah. Interest rate, really low. I'm going to open up my terminal. Not my terminal, as my terminal, yeah, sure. And add. Ooh, undefined. That's not good. So short-term assets 53. It is, what's 33? So the net worth reducer. So it is not pulling this in because state.net worth underscore reducer. I wrote that wrong. It's near the end of the day for me, so I'm getting a little slow. Okay, here we are. Here we are. But it should have still added it. So let's see. Ooh, where's it selling that now? Do we have our reducer? Oh, this is the moment of truth. Asset. Oh, nice. Okay, so we've got a bunch of stuff added already. Now, this is really, really important. Please remember this. Often, one of the biggest issues that I'll have is I'll be working with the reducer, and because I'm storing the state locally in local storage, things will get messed up if I change the reducer. So if I do any changes to the reducer, then it gets confused because it has the old reducer information as well as the new reducer. So you can see here, it still has stored the old values that I deleted. So we need to clear that. So we go to application, and then under local storage, we just right click and go clear. And this will save you so much heartache if you ever work with the reducer and you need to make changes. So now if we refresh, so now what we just stored is totally gone, and initial state should be empty. Boom, empty, empty, nice, nice. Okay, so we're gonna add a checking account. It's called checking account. Cash value is about a load of money. Interest rate is pretty small. And we go add, fingers crossed. So you'll see here, reset everything. Didn't reset the name. That's not good. We gotta figure that out. And so every time I move the range bar, it fired, but oh well. Okay, so now we have this new asset. It's got its ID. Is that category is asset. And the interest rate, we've set that. Current value, we've set that. So boom. So now we've got that stored in the reducer. So later on, when we want to edit it, all we have to do is just grab the ID, or we'll use the ID, and that will pull in so that we'll be able to manipulate that specific item, which will then change the chart and so on. So we've got it. We got it working. Nice. Okay, well, I think that's that. We just need to figure out how to fix that name situation. So the reason is that label, I had been messing around trying to fix another label issue, so I didn't have it there, but it should now reset it. Cool. Okay. So even though we refreshed, we still have that asset stored in our reducer. So that's just what we do. So now we're gonna build another one of these, and let's see, that will be the next assets that are long-term. So in this one, we need a purchase value, and we're gonna have a market value, and then return on investment. It's gonna have a whole bunch more of these. So I'm just gonna jump into that right after this. I'll take a little break. Okay.